Hey guys, tonight we're plunging into the heart of a Viking longhouse, where the air is thick with smoke and the walls hum with life. Picture yourself ducking through a low doorway, the scent of damp wood and roasted meat hitting you like a wave. It's 9th century Scandinavia, and you're not just visiting, you're living here, surrounded by snoring clansmen, flickering flames, and the faint bleat of goats from the back. This isn't some cozy cabin retreat. It's a gritty, crowded survival hub where privacy's a myth and you probably won't survive a week without a solid axe arm. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step onto the packed dirt floor, your boots sinking slightly as your eyes adjust to the gloom. The longhouse stretches maybe 50 feet long, 20 feet wide, with a high slanted roof of sod and timber. It's one big room, no partitions, just a chaotic sprawl of people, animals, and gear. The central hearth crackles, its smoke curling up to a hole in the roof that doesn't quite do its job. Your throat's already scratchy. Benches line the walls, doubling as beds, cluttered with furs, tools, and the occasional stray chicken. You count maybe 20 people crammed in here, your extended family, a couple of thralls, and a surly uncle who's already eyeing you like you owe him mead. Mainstream history tells us longhouses were the backbone of Viking settlements, built from local timber or turf, designed to house entire clans under one roof. They varied in size, but archaeological digs, like those at Lansing Meadows, show they were sturdy enough to withstand brutal winters. Yet, here's a quirky tidbit. Some longhouses had woven reed mats hanging from the rafters, not for decor, but to catch falling soot and bugs imagined sleeping under a net of crunchy critters. Historians still argue whether these mats were common or just a weird one-off in certain regions. You shuffle forward, dodging a toddler who's chasing a puppy through the crowd. The noise is relentless laughter, bickering, the clatter of wooden bowls. You're handed a chipped cup of sour ale by a grinning ant, and you realize there's no opting out of this communal life. Everyone shares everything: space, food, even the occasional lice outbreak. You find a spot on a bench, squeezing between a burly cousin and a pile of damp cloaks. The cousin nudges you, pointing to a carved wooden figure on a shelf, a tiny Thor with a wonky hammer. "Keeps the trolls out," he mutters, half serious. You nod, wondering if trolls are the least of your worries. The longhouse feels alive, its walls creaking like it's breathing. You notice the faint carvings etched into the beam-swirling knots and runes, maybe prayers for luck. Someone singing off-key by the fire, and you catch a whiff of something foul, probably the chamber pot tucked in a corner. Joke number 1. You thought your roommate's gym socks were bad, but this place makes them smell like roses. You're already itching from the straw-stuffed mattress beneath you, and you're pretty sure that's not just your imagination. As you settle in, you realize this longhouse is a microcosm of Viking life raw, interconnected and unapologetic. You're not just surviving here, you're part of a pulsing, messy community. The fire pops, sending sparks toward the roof, and you flinch, half expecting the whole place to go up in flames. Spoiler, it won't, but you're not convinced yet. For now, you lean back, sip the bitter ale, and brace for what comes next in this smoky, crowded world. You wake to the longhouse stirring, a gray dawn sneaking through the smoke hole above. The air is chilly, thick with the scent of last night's fire and something vaguely like wet dog. Your back aches from the lumpy bench bed, and you're pretty sure you've got a splinter from the rough timber wall. Everyone's already moving, grumbling, coughing, or shoving each other for space. You rub your eyes and realize there's no snooze button in a Viking longhouse. The day started, and you're expected to pull your weight. You stumble toward the hearth, where a thralla, wiry guy with a patchy beard is coaxing embers back to life. Your job, apparently, is to haul firewood from a pile outside. You tug on a wool cloak, still damp from yesterday's drizzle, and push through the heavy door. The cold slaps you hard, your breath puffing in the crisp air. The wood pile's half buried in frost and you curse under your breath as you stack logs in your arms. Joke number 1. You thought your morning commute was rough, but try lugging timber before coffee's even invented. Back inside, you dump the wood by the fire, earning a nod from the thrall. The longhouse is a hive. Now women knead dough, men sharpen tools, and a kid trips over a stray goat, sparking a chorus of laughter. Mainstream history notes that Viking daily life revolved around seasonal chores, with longhouses as the hub for everything from cooking to crafting. Excavations, like those at Ribe, Denmark, show evidence of multitasking spaces where work and home life blurred. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some Vikings used walrus ivory to carve combs, not just for grooming, but as status symbolism, flexing with a fancy comb while your hair's still tangled with straw. Your next task is sweeping the dirt floor, which feels like fighting a losing battle against a constant trickle of mud and ash. You grab a bundle of twigs tied into a makeshift broom and get to work, dodging a cousin who's carving a spoon and flicking wood chips everywhere. The floor's littered with bones, spilled grain, and yep, that's definitely a sheep dropping. You mutter about needing a Roomba, but the aunt from last night overhears and hands you a wooden bucket. "Water next," she says, pointing to a stream half a mile away. You sigh, slinging the bucket over your shoulder, already regretting your life choices. Historians still argue whether longhouse chores were strictly divided by gender or if necessity blurred those lines. Some sagas suggest women ran the household while men hunted or raided, but archaeological finds like tools and female grave shint at overlap. You're not sure who's got it worse as you trudge to the stream, the bucket banging your knee. The water's icy, and you nearly slip on a mossy rock, but you manage to fill it and haul it back, spilling half on your boots. Joke number 2. Vikings invented CrossFit fetching water, chopping wood, and dodging goats in one brutal workout. Back in the longhouse, you pour the water into a cauldron where it'll boil for porridge or stew. The fire's roaring now, but the smoke's got nowhere to go, stinging your eyes. You notice a woven reed mat dangling above, catching ash like a grim dream catcher. Yep, that's the bug trap you spotted last night. Someone's already yelling about a missing knife, and you're starting to see why tempers flare in this cramped chaos. You lean against a beam, catching your breath, and spot that little Thor carving again, its wonky hammer almost mocking your sore arms. The day's just begun, but you're already bone-tired. You realize this: grind fire, water, sweeping, repeateth the pulse of longhouse life. Everyone's got a role, and slacking isn't an option. You wipe sweat from your brow, the hearth heat mixing with the morning chill, and brace for whatever chore comes next. That splinter's still nagging, but you're too busy to care. You're still catching your breath from the water haul when the longhouse's morning chaos shifts gears. The fire's crackling, porridge is bubbling, and you're wedged between the hearth and a wall, trying not to trip over a stray spindle. The air hums with voicesome barking orders, others muttering complaints, and you realize this isn't just a house. It's a family, a messy, loud clan where everyone's tangled in each other's business. You're about to learn who runs this show and where you fit in the pecking order. The head of the household, a grizzled jarl named Bjorn, lounges on a carved bench near the fire, his beard flecked with gray. He's not shouting, but his presence commands the room. Everyone glances his way before making a move. His wife, Astrid, is just as fierce, directing thralls and kids with a sharp tongue and a sharper glare. You're part of their extended kin, maybe a distant cousin, which means you're not a thrall, but definitely not calling the shots. You notice the thralls, 3 of them, including the fire tending guy from earlier, keep their heads down, scurrying to obey. Joke number 1. You thought your family reunions were intense, but this clan makes them look like a polite tea party. Mainstream history confirms Viking households were hierarchical, with the jarl or headman at the top, followed by free family members, then thrall-softened captives from raids. Sites like Trelleborg show longhouses built to reflect this, with prime spots near the fire reserved for the elite. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some thralls could earn freedom by crafting valuable goods, like a killer sword or a fancy brooch. Talk about working your way up from the bottom. Historians still argue whether thralls were treated as property or as part of the household. Sagas paint them as both loyal retainers and resentful underdogs. Astrid catches you idling and thrusts a basket of wool into your hands. "Sort this," she snaps, pointing to a corner where you're to separate the coarse from the fine. You fumble with the greasy strands, realizing you're under her hawk-like watch. The longhouse is a web of unspoken rules. Bjorn handles disputes and raids. Astrid oversees food and textiles, and everyone else scrambles to stay useful. You spot your surly uncle from last night arguing with a cousin over a broken axe handle. Bjorn shuts it down with a single grunt, and you're impressed and a little terrified. You settle into the wool sorting, your fingers sticky with lanolin. The kids are wrestling nearby, ignored unless they get too loud, while the thralls haul in more firewood. You overhear Astrid praising her daughter, a teenager who's already a pro at spinning thread. It's clear status here isn't just about strength, skill matters too. You're starting to see why that walrus ivory comb you heard about yesterday was such a flex. In this crowded house, anything that sets you apart is gold. Joke number 2. Forget LinkedIn Vikings networked by showing off their combs and not getting banished to the goat pen. The longhouse's walls seem to pulse with this hierarchy. The Thor carving you keep noticing, it's Bjorn's placed high, where only he can touch it. You're low on the totem pole, so you keep your head down sorting wool like your life depends on it because it might. A thrall brushes past, muttering about a lost needle, and you wonder if he's plotting freedom or just survival. The fire pops, smoke curling toward that soot-caked reed mat above, and you feel the weight of everyone's rolls pressing in. You finish the wool, earning a curt nod from Astrid. It's not much, but it's something. You're starting to get the rhythm of this family, its power plays, its loyalties, its unwritten code. You lean back, the basket empty, and catch Bjorn's eye. He doesn't smile, but he doesn't scowl either. For now, you're in the game, part of this noisy, smoky clan. But you're already wondering what happens if you slip up. You're still buzzing from Astrid's nod when the longhouse's morning tempo shifts to a new task, food. Your stomach growls as you catch a whiff of porridge simmering in the cauldron. But you're not eating yet first. You've got to help feed this ravenous clan. The hearth is the heart of the operation, and you're pulled into the fray, handed a wooden spoon, and pointed toward a pile of barley and dried fish. The longhouse is a swirl of activity kids, dart underfoot, a thrall grinds grain, and Astrid's already barking orders about not wasting a single morsel. You kneel by the fire, stirring the porridge as it thickens, the heat prickling your face. The barley's coarse, mixed with bits of dried herring that smell like the sea's been trapped in a jar. You glance at the meager stores nearby, a few sacks of grain, some smoked meat, and a barrel of pickled turnips that's starting to look grim. Mainstream history tells us Viking diets leaned hard on what was local barley, oats, fish, and whatever livestock could survive the harsh winters. Digs at sites like Jorvik show evidence of bread ovens and fish bones galore. But here's a quirky tidbit. Vikings sometimes chewed on dried cod heads as a snack, like the 9th century version of beef jerky, crunchy, fishy, and probably a dental nightmare. You're tasked with fetching more fish from the storage nook, a dark corner where salted cod hangs like leathery curtains. You grab an armful, dodging a goat that somehow wandered indoors, and haul them back to the hearth. Astrid's sister, Frida, is chopping turnips with a knife that looks older than the longhouse itself. She catches you staring and grins, Better than eating bark, she says, nodding at the turnips. You chuckle, but you're not sure she's joking. Joke number 1. You thought your grocery budget was tight, but these guys are rationing fish like it's gold dust. The porridge is nearly done, but you're also helping Frida prep a stew for later. You toss in the fish, some wilted herbs, and those sad turnips, stirring as the pot bubbles. The smoke's getting to you again, curling up to that bug-catching reed mat overhead. Yep, it's still gross. Historians still argue whether Vikings ate 2 meals a day or just one big one. Sagas mention feasts, but daily life was likely leaner. You're betting on lean, given how everyone's eyeing the cauldron like it's their last hope. You notice the kids hovering, hoping for scraps, but Astrid shoos them off. Food's a team effort, but it's also a power play. Bjorn gets the first bowl, then Astrid, then the rest trickle down. You're handed a small portion, barely enough to quiet your stomach, and you slurp it standing up, the gritty barley sticking to your teeth. Joke number 2. Forget Michelin stars, Viking. Cuisine's all about, did it keep you alive? You're starting to miss that sour ale from your first night. The longhouse's rhythm doesn't pause for meals. While you eat, a cousin's repairing a net, and the thralls are hauling in more water. You spot that Thor carving again, its wonky hammer glinting in the firelight, and wonder if it's judging your stirring skills. The fishy steam mixes with the ever-present smoke, and you're already dreading the next trip to the storage. Nook something in there smells suspiciously like it's plotting revenge. You finish your porridge, scraping the bowl clean, and Frida nudges you. Good work, but don't get comfy, she says, pointing to a stack of flatbreads that need baking. You groan inwardly, realizing food prep never ends in this house. The fire crackles, the clan's chatter fills the air, and you're starting to see how every meal is a small victory against the looming threat of scarcity. You grab a lump of dough, ready to keep earning your keep. You're still wiping porridge from your chin when Frida drags you to a corner of the longhouse that's less kitchen and more workshop. The air's thick with the scent of sawdust and leather, and you're handed a chunk of wood and a blunt knife. Your new job: carve something useful, a spoon, a hook, maybe a peg to hang a cloak. The longhouse hums around you, the fires glow, casting shadows on the walls, and you realize this is where survival gets hands-on. Every tool, every trinket is born from someone's sore fingers. You settle on a bench, the wood rough under your palms, and start whittling. The knife's duller than a winter afternoon, and your first few cuts are more hacked than carved. Nearby, your surly unclelets call him Olafus, shaping a bow, his hands steady despite the mead he downed earlier. He glances at your sad splinter and snorts. Keep at it, or you'll be fetching water till Ragnarok. Joke number 1. You thought IKEA was peak Scandinavian design, but try crafting a spoon with a knife that hates you. Mainstream history shows Viking longhouses were crafting hubs, with evidence from sites like Birka revealing tools for woodworking, weaving, and even jewelry making. Every clan made what they couldn't trade for, from axe handles to boat pegs. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Vikings carved curse sticks with runes to hex their enemies. Imagine etching Olaf's stinks into a twig and burying it under his bed. Historians still argue whether these sticks were serious magic or just petty revenge. Either way, you're tempted to try one on Olaf. You focus on your wood, shaving it into something spoon-like. The longhouse's noise kids laughing. A thrall hammering iron makes it hard to concentrate, but you find a rhythm. You notice Astrid's daughter, the thread spinning pro, weaving a belt nearby. Her shuttle clicks like a metronome, and you're struck by how everyone's crafting something. Nets, boots, even a tiny wooden horse for a kid. It's not just busy work. It's the difference between a warm winter and a frozen one. Your fingers ache, and you've got a splinter because of course you do. You glance at that Thor carving across the room, its wonky hammer mocking your clumsy cuts. The fire smoke swirls up to the reed mat above, dropping a speck of ash onto your wood. You brush it off, muttering about needing a shop vac. Joke number 2. Vikings didn't have Home Depot, but they probably rated for better knives. You're starting to get why crafting matters here. That walrus ivory comb you heard about, it's not just a flex, it's proof someone had the skill and time to make it. You're nowhere near that level, but your spoon's taking shape, its bowl shallow but functional. Olaf grunts, half approving, and you feel a flicker of pride. You notice a thrall in the corner, etching a bone needle with eerie precision. You wonder if he's banking on a skill like that to buy his freedom, like the stories Frida mentioned. The longhouse feels smaller now, every inch packed with purpose. You spot a pile of half-finished project chandles, hooks, a broken loom and realize nothing goes to waste. Even the wood shavings at your feet get swept up for kindling. You finish your spoon, rough but usable, and set it aside. Frida calls you over to help sharpen tools, and you're already dreading the grindstone. The fire pops, the workshop buzzes, and you're learning fast. In this house, your hands are your lifeline. You're still rubbing your splintered fingers from carving that spoon when you're pulled to the heart of the longhouse, the central hearth. The fire's a living thing, its flames licking logs you hauled earlier, casting a warm glow that fights the creeping chill. Your new task is tending it, keeping it alive without burning the place down. The air's heavy with smoke, stinging your eyes, and you're starting to think that reed mat above isn't just catching bugs, but saving your sanity. The longhouse pulses around you, but the hearth is its steady beat, and you're now its reluctant keeper. You crouch by the fire, adding a log as the thrall from this morning, let's call him. Eric shows you the ropes. Too much, it flares. Too little, it dies, he mutters, handing you a poker. You nod, poking the embers like you know what you're doing, but a spark pops and nearly singes your cloak. Joke number 1. You thought your campfire skills were solid, but this hearth's got more attitude than a dragon. The smoke curls upward, half of it escaping through the roof hole, the rest pooling like a grumpy cloud. Your throat's raw, and you're already coughing. Mainstream history confirms the hearth was the longhouse's lifeline, used for cooking, heating, and even drying clothes. Excavations at sites like Hedeby show central fire pits lined with stones, some with iron grates for efficiency. Here's a quirky tidbit. Vikings sometimes burned seaweed when wood ran low. Imagine the longhouse smelling like a salty beach bonfire. Historians still argue whether hearths were vented well enough to avoid constant smoke inhalation. Sagas don't mention coughing fits, but you're living proof it's a problem. You adjust the logs, trying not to choke as Eric watches. The fire's heat is a blessing, but it's also a tyrant. Everyone's drawn to it, crowding the benches nearby. Astrid's stirring a pot, kids are toasting bread on sticks, and Olaf's drying his boots too close for comfort. You spot that Thor carving again, its wonky hammer glinting in the firelight, and wonder if it's protecting the hearth or just enjoying the show. The longhouse's walls creak, the wind whistling outside, and you realize this fire is all that's keeping the cold at bay. You're starting to get the hearth's rhythm. Feed it, poke it, don't let it rage. But it's not just about heat. The fire's where stories are told, deals are made, and grudges are aired. You overhear Bjorn muttering about a neighboring clan, his voice low but sharp. The hearth draws everyone in, but it also amplifies tensions. Joke number 2. Forget reality TV Viking drama unfolds right here with better lighting and worse air quality. You notice Eric slipping away to fetch more wood, his face smudged with soot. You wonder about his life thralls don't get to bask by the fire like Bjorn does. The smoke's making your head throb, and you're tempted to step outside, but Astrid shoots you a look that says, don't even think about it. You keep poking, the flame steady now, and feel a small surge of triumph. That walrus ivory comb you keep hearing about is nothing compared to mastering this beast. The longhouse feels warmer, closer, as the fire holds everyone together. You spot a kid drop his bread in the ashes and wail, earning a laugh from Frida. You grin, but your eyes are watering, and that reed mat's collecting more ash than you like. The hearth's a lifeline, but it's also a grind, and you're learning to respect its power. You lean back, wiping sweat from your brow, ready for whatever the fire demands next. You're still wiping soot from your hands, the hearth's heat lingering on your skin when night falls over the longhouse. The fire's glow softens, and the clan's bustle slows to a murmur. It's time to sleep, if you can call it that, in this crowded, creaky chaos. You're directed to a bench along the wall, already claimed by furs, cloaks, and a cousin who's sprawled out like he owns the place. You nudge him over, earning a grunt, and try to carve out a sliver of space for yourself. The air is thick with smoke and the faint whiff of unwashed bodies, and you're wondering how anyone gets a wink of rest here. You settle onto the bench, the straw-stuffed mattress crackling beneath you. It's lumpy, and you're pretty sure something's poking your ribs, probably another splinter from this cursed place. The longhouse is darker now, the fire banked low, casting shadows that dance across the timber walls. You pull a coarse wool blanket over you, but it's barely enough to fend off the chill seeping through the sod roof. Joke number 1. You thought your old mattress was bad, but this bench makes it feel like a cloud. Mainstream history tells us Viking longhouses had no private bedrooms. Everyone slept communally on benches lining the walls, often doubling as seating by day. Excavations at sites like Borg in Norway show these benches were wide enough for multiple people, packed with furs for warmth. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Vikings slept sitting up, propped against the wall, possibly to stay alert or because lying flat was a luxury for the elite. Historians still argue whether this was common or just a weird habit of certain clans. Either way, you're not thrilled about your options. You shift, trying to find a position that doesn't scream, back pain tomorrow. The longhouse isn't quiet, someone snoring like a walrus. A kid whimpers in their sleep, and the goats in the back are rustling. You spot that Thor carving across the room, its wonky hammer barely visible in the dim light, and wonder if it's guarding your dreams or just mocking your discomfort. The reed mat above sways slightly, dropping a speck of ash onto your blanket. You brush it off, muttering about needing a proper ceiling fan. Sleep feels impossible, but you close your eyes, the fire's faint crackle lulling you. You're hyper-aware of the clan around you, Bjorn and Astrid on their prime bench near the hearth, the thralls curled up closer to the door, and Olaf muttering curses in his sleep. It's a strange intimacy, sharing this space, hearing every coffin rustle. Joke number 2. Forget ASMR sleep apps. Viking longhouses come with free snoring and goat bleats, 24/7. You think back to that walrus ivory comb, wondering if its owner ever got a decent night's rest. Probably not, if they were stuck on a bench like this. Your mind drifts to the days grind hauling wood, stirring porridge, carving that spoon end. You realize sleep is as much a survival tool as the fire. You're starting to doze when a kid kicks you, flailing in their sleep. You sigh, scooting closer to the wall, and try again. The longhouse creaks, the wind howls outside, and you're learning fast. Rest here is hard won. You finally drift off, the clan's breathing blending with the fire's soft pops. It's not peaceful, but it's something. You're part of this messy, smoky world now, for better or worse. The bench digs into your side, but you're too tired to care. Tomorrow's chores are already looming, and you'll need whatever sleep you can steal. You jolt awake on the lumpy bench, the longhouse cloaked in a soft, flickering glow. The fire's been stoked, casting shadows that writhe across the walls. It's not morning, far from it. The clans gathered around the hearth, their faces lit by the flames, and you realize it's storytelling time. You rub sleep from your eyes and shuffle closer, squeezing between Frida and a kid clutching a wooden horse. The air's warm, heavy with smoke and anticipation, and you're about to hear the sagas that keep this longhouse's spirit alive. Bjorn's brother, a wiry man named Leif with a voice like gravel, takes the lead. He's perched on a stool, carving a stick as he spins a tale about Odin outwitting a giant. You lean in, the words painting vivid images: stormy seas, clashing swords, gods laughing in the clouds. The longhouse feels smaller, the walls fading as Leif's voice pulls everyone into the story. Joke number 1. You thought Netflix binges were immersive, but this guy's got surround sound drama without a single screen. Mainstream history confirms storytelling was central to Viking culture, with oral sagas passing down history, myths, and moral codes. Archaeological finds like runestones at Uppsala often echo saga themes of heroism and divine favor. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some storytellers use Kenning's poetic phrases like Whale Road for pseudo-flex their wordplay, turning a simple tale into a linguistic stunt. Historians still argue whether sagas were pure entertainment or also served as propaganda to boost clan loyalty. You're betting on both, given how the kids are hanging on Leif's every word. Leif's tale shifts to a local hero, a raider who stole a rival's hoard and lived to brag about it. You notice Astrid nodding proudly, maybe he's a relative. The fire pops, sending a spark toward that bug-catching reed mat above, and you flinch, half expecting it to catch fire. It doesn't, but the smoke's making your eyes water again. You spot that Thor carving, its wonky hammer glinting, and wonder if it's soaking up these stories too. The clan's quiet now. Even Olaf stopped muttering, and you're struck by how these tales knit everyone together. You're handed a cup of weak mead, the dregs of last night's batch, and you sip it, the sweetness cutting through the smoky air. Leif's voice dips, describing a cursed forest where trolls lurk, and the kid next to you grips his horse tighter. You stifle a grin, remembering that curstic idea from the workshop. Maybe Leif's tales inspired those hexes. Joke number 2. Forget horror podcasts. Viking storytellers could make you check under the bench for trolls. The saga winds down, Leif's hero triumphing with Thor's blessing. The clan murmurs approval, and Frida leans over, whispering, "He'll tell a new one tomorrow." You nod, realizing these stories aren't just bedtime tales, they're the Longhouse's heartbeat, tying the past to the present. You think back to that walrus ivory comb, wondering if its owner listened to sagas like this, dreaming of glory. The fire's glow softens, and you feel a strange calm, despite the smoke and the kid's elbow in your ribs. Leif starts another tale, but your eyelids are heavy. The Longhouse's warmth, the mead, the rhythmic cadence of his voice, it's all pulling you under. You lean against the wall, the carved runes rough under your fingers, and let the stories weave through your half-sleep. The clan's still listening, their faces aglow, and you're part of this moment, bound by words older than the timber around you. You're stirred from your story-induced daze by a sharp gust rattling the Longhouse's walls. The fire flickers, and you realize a storm's rolling in, the kind that makes the sod roof groan and the air taste like ice. Winter's grip is tightening, and you're about to learn what it's like to endure a brutal Scandinavian freeze in this smoky, creaking shelter. The clan's already shifting gears, furs are piled higher, the hearth is stoked, and you're handed a cloak that smells like it's been through a few too many winters. Your job now is to help batten down the Longhouse and keep the cold from winning. You trudge to the door, the wind howling like a pack of wolves, and check the wooden shutters. They're flimsy, barely holding against the gale, so you grab a hammer and some pegs to reinforce them. The cold bites your fingers, and you're cursing the lack of modern insulation. Joke number 1, you thought your drafty apartment was bad, but this Longhouse makes it feel like a tropical resort. Snow's already piling up outside, and you can see your breath indoors, mixing with the ever-present hearth smoke. Mainstream history tells us Viking longhouses were built to withstand harsh winters, with thick turf walls and sloped roofs to shed snow. Excavations at sites like Stung in Iceland show layers of sod for insulation, though leaks and drafts were constant battles. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Vikings stuffed cracks with dried moss, or even sheep fat, to block the wind. Imagine slathering your walls with grease like it's Viking caulk. Historians still argue whether longhouses stay warm enough to prevent frostbite or if clans just toughed it out. You're leaning toward the latter as your toes go numb. Back inside, you help Frida drag extra furs to the benches, piling them on kids and thralls who are already shivering. The hearth is roaring, but the heat barely reaches the walls, and that reed mat above is swaying in the draft. You spot Eric the thrall, tossing more logs on the fire, his face grim. The clan's quieter now, the storm's roar drowning out the usual chatter. You notice that Thor carving, its wonky hammer, steady in the firelight, and wonder if it's supposed to ward off blizzards too. Your next task is checking the livestock corner, where the goats and a few chickens are huddled. You toss them extra straw, their bleats muffled by the wind. The longhouse feels like a ship in a storm, creaking and swaying, but holding for now. You overhear Bjorn muttering about the roof, worried it might cave under the snow's weight. Joke number 2. Forget snow days, Vikings just shovel the roof and hope it doesn't become their skylight. You're starting to see why the hearth you tended earlier is a literal lifeline. Without it, this place would be an icebox. You think back to that walrus ivory comb, wondering if its owner ever survived a winter like this, combing their hair while their teeth chattered. The clan's pulling together, Astrid's passing out dried fish, Olaf's tying down loose gear but the tension's thick. You grab a broom to sweep snow that snuck through the door, your hands aching from the cold. The storm's not letting up, but the longhouse holds, its walls a stubborn shield. You settle near the fire, wrapping your cloak tighter, and feel a grudging respect for this place. It's not cozy, but it's tough. Like the clan itself, the kids are burrowed in furs. Frida's humming a low tune, and you're learning fast. Winter here isn't just survived, it's fought, one freezing night at a time. You're still shivering from the storm's bite, the longhouse creaking under the weight of snow. When the mood shifts, the fire's steady glow draws the clan together, but now there's a new buzz trade. A neighbor, a wiry trader named Sigrid, has braved the fading blizzard to barter her sled piled with goods. You're pulled into the fray, tasked with helping sort pelts and beads while dodging the tense undercurrents of deals and disputes. The longhouse, already a tight squeeze, feels like a marketplace crossed with a courtroom, and you're learning fast that trade here is as much about survival as it is about squabbles. You kneel by a pile of fox furs, checking for quality as Sigrid haggles with Bjorn near the hearth. Her voice is sharp, his gruff, and you catch phrases like 3 measures of wool and not worth a broken oar. The air's thick with smoke and the musky scent of pelts, and you're trying not to sneeze. Joke number 1. You thought Black Friday was cutthroat, but Viking bartering could start a blood feud over a bad deal. You notice Astrid eyeing a string of amber beads, her fingers twitching like she's plotting a heist. Mainstream history confirms Viking longhouses were trade hubs, with clans exchanging goods like furs, iron, and grain for luxuries like glass or silver. Archaeological finds at Hedeby show market stalls near longhouses, proof of bustling local economies. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some traders use hack, silver chopped up jewelry weighed for value because coins weren't always trusted. Historians still argue whether longhouse trade was mostly friendly or a hotbed for rivalries. You're betting on rivalries, given how Olaf's glaring at Sigrid like she stole his favorite axe. You hand Bjorn a fur, and he grunts approval, but the deal's getting heated. Sigrid wants more wool than Bjorn's offering, and you're stuck in the middle, stacking pelts while they bicker. The longhouse's communal vibe, remember that shared ale from your first night, turns tense when goods are on the line. You spot Eric, the thrall, quietly sorting iron nails, his eyes darting like he's seen deals go south before. That Thor carving glints in the firelight, and you wonder if it's judging the haggling or just tired of the noise. Your job shifts to fetching a sack of barley for Sigrid to inspect. You drag it from the storage nook, dodging a kid who's helping by scattering beads. The barley's meager, and Sigrid's frown says she knows it. You're starting to see why that walrus ivory comb was such a flex trade. Goods are status, and this clan's not exactly swimming in wealth. Joke number 2. Forget crypto. Vikings invested in furs and hoped nobody noticed the moth holes. The deal finally lands. Bjorn trades 2 pelts and a small sack of wool for the beads and some iron. Astrid snatches the amber, already planning a necklace, while Sigrid packs up, muttering about better offers next time. The longhouse settles, but the tension lingers. You overhear Olaf complaining to Frida about Sigrid's prices, and you're glad you're not the one settling that grudge. The reed mat above catches a stray spark, and you flinch, half expecting it to ignite the whole drama. You lean back, the pelt sorted, and realize Trey's another thread in the longhouse's tapestry, vital but volatile. The fire crackles, the clan's chatter picks up, and you're left with a pile of furs and a new respect for Bjorn's poker face. The storm's howl is fading, but you're already bracing for the next spark, whether it's a deal or a dispute. You're still dusting fur bits off your hands from the trading session when a low chant pulls you to the longhouse's center. The fire's glow is softer now, the air heavy with smoke and something else reverence. The clan's gathered in a loose circle, and you realize it's time for a ritual. A moment when the longhouse turns from a noisy hub into a sacred space. You're nudged forward, handed a small bowl of mead, and told to stay quiet. The Thor carving you've been eyeing all week seems to loom larger, and you're about to feel the spiritual pulse of this Viking world. Astrid leads the ritual, her voice steady as she calls on Thor for protection. She pours mead onto the fire, the flames hissing, and you flinch at the sudden heat. The clan murmurs, some clutching amulets, others touching runes carved into the beams. You hold your bowl, the mead's sweet tang cutting through the smoky air, and try to blend in. Joke number 1. You thought your yoga class was spiritual, but this ritual's got thunder gods and better props. The longhouse feels alive, its walls echoing the chant like they're joining in. Mainstream history tells us Vikings practiced Norse paganism in their longhouses, with rituals to honor gods like Thor or Freya for harvests, raids, or safety. Archaeological finds, like amulets at Ribe, show devotion to Thor's hammer was widespread. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some clans smeared animal blood on doorposts during rituals, believing it warded off spirits. Imagine painting your house with goat blood and calling it decor. Historians still argue whether these rituals were deeply religious or partly social glue to unify clans. You're feeling both as the mead and the chanting pull you closer to the group. You pass the bowl to Frida, who sips and hands it on. Astrid tosses herbs into the fire, their sharp scent mingling with the ever-present smoke curling toward that reed mat above. You notice Bjorn, usually stoic, touching a hammer pendant at his neck, his eyes fixed on the flames. Even Olaf's quiet, his usual grumbling replaced by a rare stillness. You spot Eric, the thrall, at the circle's edge. His face unreadable, maybe he's praying for freedom, maybe just warmth. That Thor carving, its wonky hammer glinting, feels like the ritual's anchor. Your job is to keep the fire steady, so you add a log, careful not to disrupt the mood. The flames flare, and Astrid nods, as if Thor approves. You're starting to get why that walrus ivory comb was a big deal crafting. It might have been an offering, a way to curry favor with the gods. Joke number 2. Forget church bake sales. Vikings raise funds with mead and a side of divine lightning. The chant rises, and you feel a shiver, not from the cold, but from the weight of this moment. The ritual winds down, Astrid's voice softening as she thanks Thor for shielding the longhouse. The clan disperses, some lingering by the fire, others drifting to their benches. You're left holding the empty mead bowl, the fire's warmth lingering on your face. The longhouse feels different, calmer, like it's been blessed. You glance at the Thor carving, wondering if it's winking at you. The smoke swirls, the reed mat sways, and you're struck by how this ritual tied the clan to something bigger, even if just for a night. You settle near the hearth, the spiritual buzz fading into the usual longhouse hum. The kids are whispering about trolls, Frida's humming a chant, and you're learning fast. Faith here isn't just belief, it's survival, woven into the fire and the walls. You're part of it now, for better or worse, and the gods are watching. You're still tingling from the ritual's solemn hum when the longhouse's energy shifts back to its usual chaos. The fire's glow catches a new scene. The kids, barely contained during the chanting, are now a whirlwind of rough play near the benches. You're tasked with keeping an eye on them, which feels like herding cats with axes. The air's thick with smoke and the shrieks of children wrestling, chasing, or pretending to be raiders. You lean against a beam, watching the pint-sized Vikings learn the ropes of longhouse life, and realize this noisy mess is how the clan's future takes shape. You spot a boy, maybe 8, with a mop of red hair, swinging a stick like it's a sword, sparring with a girl who's given as good as she gets. They're dodging goats and benches, their laughter cutting through the hearth's crackle. Your job is to make sure they don't break anything or each other. You shout, "Ease up!" but they ignore you, too caught in their game. Joke number 1. You thought babysitting your cousins was tough, but these kids make them look like library monitors. The longhouse feels smaller, with their energy bouncing off the walls. Mainstream history tells us Viking children learned survival skills early, often through play that mimicked adult tasks like fighting or crafting. Archaeological finds, like toy swords at Birka, show kids were raised to be tough, ready for raids or harsh winters. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some kids wore tiny Thor's hammer pendants, not just for protection, but to signal clan loyalty. Imagine a Viking toddler rocking godly bling. Historians still argue whether children's play was purely practical or also a way to blow off steam in cramped longhouses. You're betting on both, given the chaos you're witnessing. You step in when the red-haired boy trips, nearly crashing into the hearth. You grab his arm, steering him back to the benches, and he grins like it's all part of the fun. The girl's now teaching a younger kid to weave straw into a crude doll, her hands quick like Astrid's. You notice Frida watching, chuckling as she mends a cloak. "They'll be running this place soon," she says. And you realize she's right. These kids are learning by doing, soaking up the longhouse's rhythms. That Thor carving, its wonky hammer glinting, seems to approve of their wild spirit. Your role shifts to handing out wooden toys a horse, a boat to keep the younger ones occupied. The older kids are back to wrestling, one mimicking Leif's saga from last night, shouting about giants. You think of that walrus ivory comb, wondering if its owner was once a kid like this, learning to carve between scuffles. Joke number 2. Forget summer camp Viking kids trained for life with sticks and a side of chaos. The smoke swirls toward that reed mat above, and you're half tempted to join the play just to stay warm. You notice Eric, the thrall, pausing to toss a stray toy back to a kid, his face softening for a moment. It hits you that even the lowest in the longhouse have a stake in these children. They're the clan's legacy. The red-haired boy runs past, now raiding a pile of furs, and you sigh, already exhausted. The longhouse's walls echo with their shouts, the fire pops, and you're learning fast. These kids aren't just playing, they're growing into the gritty, communal world you're all trapped in. You settle on a bench, keeping one eye on the chaos. The kids' energy is infectious, but you're glad when Astrid calls them to eat, giving you a break. The longhouse hums, the future unfolding in their noisy games, and you're a part of it, for now, whether you like it or not. You're still catching your breath from corralling the kids when a hushed excitement ripples through the longhouse. The fire's glow catches whispered conversations, and you overhear Olaf muttering about a big venture. It dawns on you, the clan's buzzing about a raid. Not just any raid, but one being planned right here, in the smoky heart of the longhouse. You're not invited to the war council. Bjorn and his inner circle are huddled near the hearth butt. You're close enough to catch snippets, and you're tasked with keeping the benches clear while the tension builds. The air is thick with anticipation, smoke, and the faint clink of sharpening blades. You sweep straw and stray toys from the benches, your ears straining to pick up details. Bjorn's voice is low, talking about a coastal village ripe for the taking. Leaf, the storyteller, is sketching a map in the dirt, pointing out rivers and cliffs. You're trying to look busy, but you're all in on the eavesdropping. Joke number 1. You thought office gossip was juicy, but Viking raid plans make it sound like a book club. The longhouse feels charged, like it's holding its breath, waiting for the next move. Mainstream history confirms Viking raids were meticulously planned, often targeting wealthy but poorly defended sites like monasteries or villages. Archaeological finds, like ship remains at Gokstad, show longships built for speed and stealth, perfect for hit-and-run attacks. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Vikings left rune graffiti at raid sites, carving boasts like "Thorfinn was here" on stonestalk about tagging your conquests. Historians still argue whether raids were purely for loot or also about gaining fame and power. You're guessing all three, given how Bjorn's eyes gleam as he speaks. You move to stack cloaks, catching a glimpse of Astrid sharpening a dagger, her face unreadable. The kids are quieter now, sensing the shift, and even the goat seems subdued. You spot that Thor carving, its wonky hammer steady in the firelight, and wonder if it's blessing this reckless plan. The reed mat above sways, catching ash, and you're starting to feel the weight of what's coming. Raiding isn't just a job, it's a gamble that could bring riches or leave the longhouse mourning. Your job shifts to hauling a crate of dried fish for the raiders' provisions. You drag it from the storage nook, the salty stench hitting you like a wave. Olaf's now polishing a shield, muttering about glory or Valhalla, and you're not sure if he's brave or just unhinged. Joke number 2. Forget startup pitches. Vikings sell their raids with maps in the dirt and a side of mead-fueled bravado. You think back to that walrus ivory comb, wondering if it was looted on a raid like this, a trophy of someone's risky bet. The planning wraps up, Bjorn clapping Leif on the shoulder as they finalize the crew. You're not going, thankfully, but you feel the ripple effect. The longhouse's rhythm is off. Everyone on edge, some excited, others grim. Eric, the thrall, is tasked with packing gear, his silence louder than Olaf's boasts. You finish clearing the benches, the fire's heat mixing with the nervous energy, and realize this raid could change everything: more wealth, more feuds, or worse. You lean against the beam, the carved runes rough under your fingers, and watch the clan disperse. The longhouse is still, but the raid's shadow lingers like a storm waiting to break. You're learning fast. In this world, adventure and danger are two sides of the same axe, and the longhouse holds its breath for both. You're still reeling from the raid's buzz, the longhouse humming with nervous energy when the mood swings hard into celebration. The fire's piled high, its flames licking the air, and the clan's setting up for a feast. Not just any feast, a raucous one, fueled by mead and the promise of glory from the upcoming raid. You're roped into the chaos, hauling barrels of ale and dodging thralls, juggling platters of roasted meat. The longhouse is a riot of noise, laughter, and clinking cups, and you're about to dive into the heart of Viking revelry. You lug a heavy barrel to the hearth, the sour tang of ale mixing with the smoky air. Astrid's directing the setup like a general, while Bjorn's already toasting with a horn of mead, his laugh booming. Table's really just planks on benches there laden with bread, fish, and a rare treat. A whole roasted boar, its skin crackling. You're handed a cup of mead, sticky and strong, and told to keep up. Joke number 1. You thought your last party was wild, but Vikings make it look like a knitting circle. The longhouse feels alive, its walls shaking with the clan's roar. Mainstream history tells us Viking feasts were social glue, strengthening bonds before big events like raids. Archaeological finds at sites like Leidre show feasting halls with animal bones and shattered drinking horns, proof of epic blowouts. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Vikings drank from enemies' skulls or so, sagas claim, though it's more likely they used carved wooden cups to flex their status. Historians still argue whether feasts were purely for morale or also a stage for power plays. You're betting on both, given how Olaf's challenging a cousin to a drinking contest. You weave through the crowd, dodging a kid waving a bread chunk like a sword. Your job now is slicing boar, and you grab a knife, hacking at the meat while Frida piles portions onto wooden plates. The mead's flowing, and the clan's getting rowdy, Leif's reciting a saga, half slurred, and a thrall's strumming a bone flute. You spot that Thor carving, its wonky hammer glinting, and wonder if it's toasting the chaos too. The reed mat above catches a stray spark, and you flinch, hoping it holds up through this madness. The feast hits full swing, and you're swept into a toast, your cup raised to Thor in victory. The mead burns your throat, and you're laughing despite yourself as Olaf spills his drink mid-boast. Joke number 2. Forget karaoke Vikings belt sagas and settle scores with mead-fueled bravado. You think back to that walrus ivory comb, imagining it passed around at a feast like this, a prize from some long-ago raid. The longhouse's heat, the music, the shouting jits overwhelming but electric. You notice Eric, the thrall, serving ale, his face blank even as the clan roars. The feast is for the free, not him, and you feel a pang. Astrid pulls you into a dancer, clumsy, stomping, circling, you're spinning, the fire's glow blurring, someone shouting about the raid, and the crowd cheers, but you catch Frida's worried glance. The longhouse is a powder keg of joy and nerves, and you're caught in its spark. You finally slump onto a bench, your head buzzing from mead and noise. The feast still raging, but you're spent, the boar grease on your fingers a badge of survival. The longhouse pulses, the clan united in this fleeting, wild moment, and you're learning fast. Feasts like this aren't just parties, they're the clan's heartbeat before the storm. You're still buzzing from the feast's chaos, the taste of mead lingering on your tongue when the longhouse begins to quiet. The fire's burned low, its embers casting a soft, amber glow across the bench's sheep's hooves. The clan's sprawl of furs and benches is strewn with the aftermath of the feast-spilled ale, gnawed bones, and a few snoring Vikings. You're alone with your thoughts, tasked with sweeping the floor as the longhouse settles into a rare stillness. The air is heavy with fading smoke, and you realize this is your moment to reflect on the wild, smoky world you've been living in. The raid looms, but for now, the longhouse whispers peace, and you're ready to soak it in. You grab the twig broom, sweeping ash and crumbs, your movements slow as the day's grind catches up. The longhouse feels different now less, a chaotic hive, more a weathered sanctuary. You pause by the hearth, its embers pulsing like a heartbeat, and think back to your first night here, ducking through that low doorway. Joke number 1. You thought you'd never survive this place, but here you are, sweeping like a pro and only mildly terrified of goats. The Thor carving, its wonky hammer barely visible, seems to nod approval from its shelf. Mainstream history tells us longhouses were more than homes. They were microcosms of Viking society, blending family, work, and ritual under one roof. Excavations at sites like Firkat show how these spaces foster community even amid tension. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Vikings hung horse skulls in longhouses to scare off spirits. Imagine waking up to a bony grin instead of an alarm clock. Historians still argue whether longhouses were claustrophobic traps or cozy havens. You're leaning toward trap, but tonight with the fire's glow, you see the haven. You sweep near the benches, the straw mattresses lumpy from restless sleepers. You think of the Clan Bjorn's iron grip, Astrid's sharp commands, Eric's quiet endurance, the kids' wild games. Each moment, from hauling wood to chanting for Thor, wove you into their world. That walrus ivory comb you keep hearing about? It's a ghost now, maybe looted or crafted, but it reminds you how every object here carries a story. You brush past the reed mat above, its soot-caked weave a grim trophy of your hearth-tending days, and grin. Joke number 2. You trade that comb for a modern vacuum, but you're oddly proud of this mess. The longhouse's walls creak, the storm's echo gone, leaving only the fire's soft crackle. You think of the raid, its shadow hanging over the feast's joy, and wonder who'll return. The sagas Leif spun, the trays with Sigrid, the kids' play, they're all roots, grounding this clan against what's coming. You lean on your broom, the dirt floor smoother now, and feel a strange calm. This place, with its smoke and splinters, has carved itself into you, just like those runes on the beams. You finish sweeping, the longhouse glowing in the embers' light, and set the broom aside. You're part of this world now, for better or worse, and it's time to rest. The fire's fading, but its warmth lingers, a quiet promise. You glance at that Thor carving one last time, its hammer a silent vow, and feel the longhouse settle around you, ready for whatever dawn brings. And so, you step back from the hearth, the longhouse's glow softening into a gentle embrace. The embers pulse, their warmth a whisper against the night's chill, and the walls seem to sigh, cradling the clan in their weathered arms. You find your bench, the furs heavy, the straw softer than it was that first night. The air carries a faint trace of mead and smoke, but it's soothing now, like a lullaby woven from the day's chaos. You think of the stories Odin's cunning, Leif's heroes, and they drift like shadows, guarding your dreams. The raid waits beyond the horizon, but here, in this moment, the longhouse holds you close, its heartbeat steady, its spirit kind. You close your eyes, the fire's last crackle fading, and let the stillness carry you away, safe in the clan's rugged heart. Sleep now under the watchful runes, and let the longhouse whisper peace. Sweet dreams.